All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the broadcast. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. This is the Thursday, May 30th, 2019 edition of the broadcast. Thanks so much for being here with me again for another edition of the show. I'm going to be getting into a bunch of different various topics and news items for you here tonight on the show as per usual. So I'll be getting right into that. Kind of been a slow news week this week, but luckily I've had a lot of stuff sitting back in the to-go box here for a while. So I got lots of stuff to get into and talk about. Lots of response from the Ween discussion the other night. I guess so. The guy that requested I talk about Ween, Steven, I believe it was. Yeah, you had a lot of other people enjoy that, so there you go. Well, it was fun to talk about. But yeah, a great band. Somebody left a comment and compared them to They Might Be Giants. Ugh. I don't agree with that at all, and not only do I not agree with that, I fucking hate They Might Be Giants. Ugh. They're the worst fucking... Oh, God, they're the worst band. If I meet somebody and they tell me they're They Might Be Giants fan, I will automatically not like that person. I'm serious. Ugh. It's funny, man, because I've known people before through the years, lots of different people that, for whatever, I don't know, for whatever reason, you something doesn't jive with them, you can't put your finger on what it is. And then later on, I'd find out, they're just fanatics for They Might Be Giants. Like, ugh. That's another one. It's just like I talked about with Rush. Like every time I don't know why people draw some comparisons. It's just like, I get so sick of that. People go, oh, you like this band, you must love so-and-so band. No. I don't know why people do that. It frustrates me to no end. Oh, you like, probably the worst one, I'm not kidding. This was a long, long time ago. It only ever happened once. The Dream Theater and Rush ones happened a lot, but the one that I think takes the cake for me as far as what I've personally experienced. This was probably over 20 years ago, but I was like a teenager. But someone said this to me one time. I'm not kidding you, because this one's so ridiculous, especially musically. You can't even see how someone would try to make a connection other than just the name of the bands. Literally one time somebody said to me, oh, you're a Queen fan? Oh, you must be into Queensryche. What? Why? Because they both have the word Queen in their name? What the fuck is that about? No, I don't like fucking Queensryche. I never liked fucking Queensryche. I don't like that whole style. Don't get me wrong, I like some metal stuff, but I don't like that. I'm not a fan of that. And my God, I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but here in Dallas, man, it's like a fucking plague. And I know it is a lot elsewhere because there's a lot of other bands out there with that vocal sound, but that's my least favorite metal vocal style other than the fucking Cookie Monster shit. Is that fucking Jeff Tate from Queensryche and fucking Bruce Dickinson vocal. God, I can't stand that style. I'm not that's another big surprise. If people are always surprised to find out about me, is I'm not a big Maiden fan either. I'm not a big fan of either one of those bands. And the main thing has always been the vocal. I just don't like that. Whatever thing they do. I'm not a fan of that at all. But man, especially, I don't know, the past 10 years or so, it's like all these bands pop up with that same, it's like every time a vocal, but I mean, it happens a lot. Every time a certain vocal style becomes successful, then record labels and people who are trying to make it, you end up getting 100 copies of that. It's nothing new. I mean, it's gone on forever. It's been going on. I mean, shit, since the days of Elvis and before. I mean, Once Elvis hit big with his style, then you had a bunch of Elvis copycats. I mean, it's the usual thing. Led Zeppelin. I mean, how many fucking Robert Plant clones have there been through the years? Especially David Coverdale, Whitesnake. Ugh. There's parts in that song, Still of the Night, where you're just like, is that Robert? I mean, it just sounds identical, you know? And then he did a project in the 90s, which was actually really good. I mean, a lot of people slept on that. Coverdale Page, you ever hear that record? It didn't sell very well, but it was surprisingly good, man. I went back and listened to it recently. I remember I had it on CD or whatever when it came out. When I was a teenager, I got it, but I hadn't listened to it in years. It's really good. I mean, makes sense. I don't know why they did end up doing more things together. I mean, if Jimmy Page still wants to do something Led Zeppelin wise, he's been trying for years because Robert Plant doesn't want to do it anymore, understandably. But yeah, I mean, David Coverdale and Jimmy Page did that record together, Coverdale Page, and I mean, it's it sounds like Led Zeppelin 2.0 identically. So sometimes that works. Sometimes that's the thing. Paul Rodgers, from Bad Company, is another one whose vocal style was copied a lot. But and then of course you get into the 90s stuff and all the oh God, that was the worst. Can you take me higher? Ugh. So you always have that, I guess, but no. I'm trying to think of what. I'll tell you my two least favorite bands out of all right off the top. They Might Be Giants and Foreigner. Ugh. Yeah. Yeah. Foreigner is the fucking worst. That's another one. Like, if you tell me you like Foreigner, I can't take you serious. I can't take anything that you say seriously if you tell me you like Foreigner. I just can't. That They Might Be Giants too, but Foreigner, just no. Because anything else you ever tell me, there's just no way I could be friends with you, because anything else you tell me for the rest of your life is going to automatically be peppered in my mind with the fact that you think Foreigner is a good band. Ugh. And I think it's vocally with that too, because if I'm thinking just like their music, those songs are just cheesy. I mean, it's the definition of corporate rock. I mean, that was, that wasn't a band. There's lots of those through the years. Foreigner was definitely one of those, where they were, I've heard people say this before, like, oh, I don't get it. What's corporate rock? Well, I don't get what certain bands, I've heard bands say, dude, people call us corporate rock. Well, what that is that's any band that doesn't start at the grassroots level. It's not like these guys just started it. They're actually put together and pieced together by people that work for major record labels strictly and solely for the purpose of generating fat cash. That's corporate rock. And there's been a lot of those bands through the years. Definitely Foreigner was one of those. Bon Jovi was one of those. I mean, none of the people that have ever even been in Bon Jovi through the years, Bon Jovi the entity is owned and solely owned by him because it was put together that way. There's lots of acts like that, where people have called Journey corporate rock before, and it does apply a little bit to them, but they weren't complete. The only difference is they weren't completely put together by a record label. They were formed out when Greg Raleigh and Neil Schon left Santana's band. Because if you go back and watch some of the early Santana footage, you can see Neil Schon, who went on to be in Journey, just tearing up the guitar on stage with Carlos Santana. And then he's got a big, huge Jew afro. And unless you know the story, what you don't realize when you watch these clips is that Neil Schon's like 16 years old in those clips. He was so good that Carlos Santana put him in his group, in his band, touring and everything, making records when he was 16. So when him and Greg Raleigh left Santana's band, they formed Journey, and Journey wasn't, it was just, you know, yeah, they were on a major label, but it was like a space rock, jam rock, you know, kind of fusion rock instrumentals. The first 2 or 3 records of Journey were all instrumental stuff. And then because it wasn't selling as well as the label wanted him to, the label had a singer that they didn't know what to do with. They didn't know, you know, what kind of an act to place him with, what to market him as. They just knew he was a good voice and they wanted to do something with him. So then the record label said, okay, let's take this guy that doesn't have a band and we don't know where to fit him. Let's see if we can plug him in with this band Journey that doesn't have any vocals, or it's all instrumental, doesn't have any singing, and see what we can do with it. And what's interesting is when they brought in Steve Perry into the fold for the first time, if you look at their record label, their record covers, when Steve Perry comes into the band, this is when they started using the iconic Egyptian scarab beetle. They got some great covers in the 70s. One of their live albums that they had came out right before they just blew completely up with the Escape album. You know, had all the big hits and stuff on it. It's called Captured. I love that cover. And I think another one is called, I can't remember. They have some amazing album covers. I really love the one that's on the cover of the Captured live album, which is a good record, by the way. But I always just thought that was interesting, you know, that choice of that type of iconography with the, you know, Egyptian scarab beetle and the meaning behind that, and how, you know, it's very interesting. I mean, that's a magical symbol. And that's essentially what they did. So yeah, I could see where people would, because essentially the formula for what gave them huge success was cooked up by somebody at a record label. That's where they get the corporate rock label from. But I think that they're to a lesser degree corporate rock than, you know, something like Foreigner or Bon Jovi or some of this other stuff, where these guys weren't a band that were trying to make it and playing together and blood, sweat, and tears and all the shit you got to go through to be in a band for so many years to even get to the point where you can even be considered to be looked at. I mean, it's a long haul. Most people aren't willing to be dedicated to make that long haul. All the bands I've ever been in, I've always found myself being the only one willing to go as far as it takes to do the long haul. But it's not, you know, most people do anything, they'll do something for, you know, 2 years, 2 or 3 years, and if that, and if it's not popping by then, they're done with it, then move on to something else. But being in a band, I got to tell you, that's the whole thing. My biggest regret from playing in bands from years ago is that I didn't stick with if that's the advice I could give any young musician, is when you're first starting out, pick a really good name. Like find a band names. All band names pretty much suck, but they become accepted after many years just because that becomes the thing. But that's my biggest regret. I should have stuck with whatever name or whatever thing that I came up with originally under my music, and just continued to release, even if it's just independently and nobody hears it. under that name for years and years and years, because eventually once your name is around long enough, you'll eventually get noticed. And I've seen it happen a million times with bands. So that's the most important thing. Is the problem is now there's way too many, there's way too many solo artists. There's too much muck. You're just not going to make it with just your name as a solo artist. You've got to make it with a band first, and then, do your solo acoustic project once you get established. And most people they don't want to go through the shit you got to go through to be in a band, because it's tough and it's sacrifice and it's, compromise and it's blood, sweat, and tears. There's a whole lot of doing with whole lot of little return. Pretty much, I think that's the only reason I've been able to do this as long as I have, because this is very similar to being in a band. It's doing a whole lot of work for a whole lot of years for not a whole lot of return and not a whole lot of praise and, pats on the back. It's pretty much the same thing. But if you stick it out and you continue to stick to your guns and maintain your vision, eventually the tide turns. It turns for everybody. It always does. It doesn't matter what it is. But yeah, I think that's the main thing, is that just doing your music or whatever under the moniker of one name, because, I've been in a bunch of bands that should have, I've been in a bunch of bands. I've only probably been in, I don't know. I've been in a few that should have really made it. But, then when you're a solo player like me, I played in band. I started playing in bands before I was even old enough to drink. I started playing in clubs before I was old enough to drink. I was still in high school, and started having a band that was a semi-pro band within a year of starting it. But once one thing breaks up or whatever, or you join another band, you spend all your time in these other bands, but then at the end of it, you really have nothing musically to show for it, because you end up spending time in all these bands you thought were going to be kind of like relationships with women too, or women with men, vice versa. It goes both ways, but, where you spend all your time dedicated to this one thing, but then once enough time goes by, you realize, you dedicate all this time into one thing in so many times that eventually now, years pass, you got nothing to show for it. Because I've played every position in a band. That's why I have a lot of insight and knowledge into every level and aspect of the music industry, because I've seen it and I've been there. I've been there when I've seen contracts. I've been there when people got signed. You won't see this ever again, and only I ever saw it once in my life. But I did once see a band play a completely packed out show, get off stage, and I was out back, like smoking, talking to some of the guys in the band, and I'm not kidding you. I saw, this is like 1993, I think. Yeah. Fucking white limo pulls up, dude. And a big fat guy smoking a cigar, like something out of the fucking Blues Brothers or something not kidding you, gets out of the fucking car and says, I'm from such and such record label. Our record label's in the Bahamas. I'm going to take you guys to sign you right now. Let's go. And saw the band get in the fucking car and be whisked off to the airport and get signed to a record label right then, right after playing the fire. I saw that happen once in my life. You'll probably never, you won't ever see that happen again. But you hear those stories, they happen. They used to happen. I saw it. That was one of those unbelievable things I've ever seen in my life. To literally see Mr. Big, Mr. fucking record label man smoking a fat cigar in a white limo, pull up and go, I'm taking you boys to the Bahamas right now to sign you. Get in the car, we're going to the airport. Right then and there. Unbelievable. But I've played every position in a band. I've been the lead singer and guitar player, primary frontman and songwriter. I've been that. I've been a bass player. One band I played for a short time, but I did play bass and keyboards in one band for a short time. And how I got the gig was because I can do this. I don't do it, but I can, and I happened to do it just because it fit with the particular song we were working on that time. But what made them have to have me in the band was they saw me do the Geddy Lee thing. I literally was fretting notes on the bass on my left hand. I don't even think Geddy even does that. While I was playing keyboard notes on my right hand, and then I was singing at the same time. Now, I've seen Geddy play the bass notes, and you'll hit some, keyboard licks, go back to the bass. I was literally like one hand on the keyboard, one hand on the bass, playing that and singing. You should see the look on these people's faces, man. They were like, as soon as we finished the song, they were like, "Oh, yeah, you're in. Yeah, you're in." Another band I just played keyboards in. I played drums in a band. Another band I just played maracas and shakers. So I've been in every position you can play in a band. Everybody always wants me to be a bass player. I'm in their band. I don't want to be a bass player. It's boring. But it's probably the instrument I'm most. I can't say I've mastered any one instrument. You know what I mean? I wouldn't say I'm a master at any, but bass was probably the one I came the closest to. Because I didn't want to be a guitar player at first. I wanted to be a bass player. And I remember a friend of mine who's passed away now. We didn't even play. When I moved to the school, I was the only person there into music, and he was the only person there that I met. Neither one of us played any instruments. And I remember, like, right after we met each other in 7th grade or something, we were like, dude, one day we're going to have a band. And, you say shit like that when you're a kid, and you don't ever really fucking think it's going to happen. And then, a few years later, he got a guitar. And, he started playing stuff right away. So that's when I was, back, it's a million guitar players. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to play guitar. I'm going to play bass. So I asked my dad if he'd get me a bass. And of course, when you're 13, 14, 15, whatever, parents have already been through the shit with you where, you want something, they get it for you, you play with it for 2 or 3 months, and then it's in the closet collecting dust. So I think that's what my dad was thinking at the time, was like, all right, you're not going to fucking play it or whatever. So no one took me seriously. And so I lived with my grandparents at the time, and my grandpa had this big barn in the back of their house that he did just, on the side and on weekends and stuff, he did a lot of woodcraft stuff, making those clocks that you used to see. It would be made out of like a center cut from like a tree or something. And they would gloss them up and put, clock machinery in them and stuff. He'd do stuff like that, or make different things. My point is, he had all kinds of wood and tools and paint and shit. So I, one day after school, I went home and I just started, I got a bunch of guitar magazines and stuff, and I just started basically, and I got him to help me a little bit. Once he saw what I was trying to do, it was easier. But yeah, it was it was made out of like plywood and shit. I made like 3 or 4 layers I got like the outline of the bass and drew it around the wood and then cut it out. And we had to end up like, just to make it the thickness of a regular bass, we had to end up, wood screwing like 3 separate cut pieces of wood together. It was so janky. And this is so hilarious. I wanted to, I was wondering what color I was going to paint it. I always like red and black. I still like red and black together. So we ended up making the body and everything. And then the neck was a little trickier. So I had to figure out, scale length and all that. And most, if not all guitars, there's some that don't. So there's some guitars where they'll make them where they just put the frets right into the wood or whatever. But a lot of guitars have a separate fret piece that glues down onto the neck, and then, you put the frets into that or whatever. Well, we were making this out of scraps. I was making it out of scraps. So, that's when I realized, okay, this is going to be a fretless bass. So we got the neck all smoothed down and everything, and like a fretless, and then I was like, okay, well, I got to have. The only thing I bought to make this thing was the 4 bass tuners that you wrap the strings around to tune it with. I bought that. The bridge came off some old busted old acoustic guitar. And the strings, I think that was all the money that was put into that. And then an old pickup out of an old electric guitar. And it didn't even have knobs. There was no volume knobs or tone knobs on this thing. I cut a guitar lead, a guitar cable, and snipped the end off of it and soldered the wires together. So the plug was just a cable, like a cable you plug into an amp, and the cable was going directly to the pickup. And I didn't have an amp. And my grandmother and grandfather had one of those old, made them in the 60s and 70s, those big, they had the big console TVs. Well, they also had the big console stereos. You get them at Sears. It was a piece of furniture. Big old wooden cabinet with an open top door, and it had a turntable in it and an AM/FM stereo receiver. And theirs had an 8-track player that also would record onto 8 tracks. And I found, and it had an input into it, not a quarter inch, but a half headphone sized input. And I went to a flea market and found a bunch of brand new blank 8-track cassette tapes, recordable, for like $3 for $1 at some. I was like, oh, perfect. So yeah, that's how I taught myself how to play. I plugged this bass, that homemade fretless bass that had the goddamn cable plugged right to the pickup. No volume or tone knob, none of that. No frets. Plugged into a 1970s Sears 8-track record. You had to hit push down the red button, record, initiate it to record, and then that would take the input that you had. But I could sit there and I could put like Black Sabbath or something on the record player, and I could play along to it and record myself on this 8-track playing along to it. The problem was trying to play it back for somebody, because then you had to try to play it back on the 8-track. Nobody had 8-track players by that point. But that was it. But anyway, my point is, that was when my dad saw this, he lost his mind. He was he just couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe that I fucking made this thing. But that's what showed everybody I really wanted to play, because I went to the trouble of making this thing, and I actually taught myself how to play on this thing. And yeah, you better bet your ass. The very next Christmas, yeah, Pops got me a bass that year for sure. No question about it. But I was, what stuff I was listening to, because I was playing it with a distortion pedal too. And after about 6 months or so, my dad was like, man, we're going to have to get you a guitar. I'm like, what? I wouldn't even hear it at first. Wouldn't even hear it. That's crazy to think because I'm such a guitar fanatic now and have been for so long. But there was a time where I was like, oh, fuck that. I'm not playing guitar. Everybody plays guitar. I'm a bass player, man. I want to play bass and sing, fucking I want to be Geddy Lee. And my dad was like, we got to get you a guitar. There's just no way. I'm like, no, Dad, I play. I was arguing with him. I play different. This is, my own thing, my own style. He was like, no. We got to get you. You're playing that thing like a guitar. I'm like, so? Some people like that. And I'm glad I listened to him because it wasn't until I switched over to playing guitar that I actually started writing songs, because you can't really write songs on a bass. I mean, some people say they can. I guess you could. I'm not saying it's 100% impossible, but you're just not going to. You're really not going to write songs like you can write on a guitar, or at least make it sound any kind of good. So then then that's when everything started to change. Too, because the friend that I had in school, we actually did end up starting a band together. It was the first band I was ever in, but it didn't last long, and we had creative differences pretty much from the jump. He wanted to do Metallica sounding stuff, and I wanted to do more punk rock and hardcore sounding stuff. But it really did. Once I started my own band, and I was, I never wanted to be a singer. I just got pushed into it, man. That's how you wouldn't believe how many singers out there would tell you that same thing. I don't think there's very few people, unless you're just a God-given, out of the gates, unless you're Freddie Mercury, really, nobody, for the most part, sets out and says, yeah, I want to be the singer. Nobody, everybody wants to play guitar, bass, but when it comes down to, okay, well, we don't have, that's how I fell into it. It was totally by accident. The first band I was in, or second band I was in, and I played bass, the singer didn't show up, and they were already on the rocks with this guy. They weren't really digging him. And, so he didn't show up for practice one day, and so I just started doing the vocals on the songs we were doing, just doing covers and stuff then. And same thing, they were like, holy shit. Because they just wanted me to be the bass player. And here, next thing I know, and the guy they booted out happened to be the son of a friend of my mom's or something, and I didn't even know it. So yeah, there was a lot of shit for that, because they ended up kicking out at first. When they first brought me in, they had another guy brought in that they were going to use as a bass player, and they brought me into the first practice, and they were like, well, you know what, we're going to have two bass players. And I was like, okay, whatever you want to do. And then they called me that night, and they were like, hey, forget what we said earlier, dude. We were just saying that because he was there. We're not going to have two bass players. You got the gig. We're going to tell that guy tomorrow. You shouldn't want to tell him today. So then they let him go, and then we had the next practice, and then that's when the singer didn't show up. And then I was like, well, I'll sing the stuff for practice. We have, just a guide vocal, basically. So you're not just going along during practice with nothing. I was just like, well, I'll just do the guide vocal. That way everybody knows where we're at in the song, for practicing purposes. And then we got done, and they were like, hey, man, we want you to be the singer and the bass player. And it didn't end up going anywhere. So then after that's when I started my own group. And I had a bunch of different lineups, man. We had so crazy. People have asked me before, I don't have any recordings from that old stuff. I just don't. And I don't have any recordings I haven't recorded any of my own music. I mean, I record the stuff that I do for the soundtracks of the films and stuff I make, but all that music, for the most part, is stuff that I do. There's been a few things I've had friends and other people say, hey, I want to contribute this. through the years I've had in the movies, but I've written a bunch of songs. I do want to make a proper record before it's all over with, at least one, and maybe do like a few new songs and then a bunch of stuff that I've written in the past, and record it right the way I want to do it, in a good analog studio, and have it pressed on vinyl and stuff. I am going to do that eventually at some point. Not because I have any aspirations to make it in a band or anything. I mean, but I can still play, I can still sing, and play all the instruments myself. That's what I'm going to do. If I'm going to do it, eventually make a record with some of my older stuff and some of my newer stuff where I play all the instruments, do all the production, everything like that. So, but that's all that stuff's been on the back burner. I put most of the music stuff, with the exception of the band my sister and I had a few years ago. Well, it's been more than a few years ago. We broke up like 2011. So, but other than that, pretty much once I started doing this, all the musical stuff went on the back burner, just because there's no time. But no, it's definitely something that I'm glad I've been able to incorporate into, at least somewhat. Not, nothing like what I would do. Little musical snippets and stuff for movies is nothing like what I would do as far as my own music, but it still is a very creative thing that I do, because I don't all the music that I do for my films, I do them right on the spot. None of that stuff's pre-planned. Probably, in some cases, probably shows. It's just the way I prefer to do it. I don't come up with anything. Because, I mean, you could easily spend months and months just doing music for a film. So what I like to do is, once the film's pretty much done, that's when I'll, because I've already done everything else in the film. I've lived with it. I know every scene. So that's when I'll go back and pull it up and just have the instrument, whatever. Most of the time it's a keyboard or whatever in front of me. And I'll just play the film and play parts back and sit in front of it and just noodle around with things until I feel like I've found something that fits what I'm trying to show visually on the screen. So a lot of the stuff that I've done in the films, I like to do that in sort of a separate process. But I get so many. Every time I'm talking about anything musical, I've thought about doing a separate music show and stuff before, but it's just really no time with everything else. But I will try and do something like that in the future. I'm gonna do some record review shows and stuff. But people are always what's the word I'm looking for? Not shocked, not overwhelmed, not impressed. Not those. I don't know what the word is. But people are oftentimes sort of in disbelief. Or, wow, they can't believe it. They're like, wow, you know as much about music as you do about all this other stuff. Yeah, it's something anything that I get into, man. That's the best thing that you can have in the world is for me to be a fan of your band. That's what you want. Because when I get it, man, there are some things, I guess I don't go whole hog into everything that I like or listen to, but if I get into a group or something, or I get into anything, I get into it. I get deep into it. Because, I don't know, that's just how I am about everything, I guess. I don't want to do anything half-ass. I don't do anything halfway, which always has its drawbacks and its positives. Obviously, the drawback of that is stuff like, the length of time it takes me to make a lot of these films. But I don't know. I just can't be. You got to be, if you're going to be, just for the sake of everybody involved and the sake of whatever it is you're doing, you got to be all in with whatever it is you're doing. That's another big piece of advice I can give people, you know. Don't be half into anything. But oftentimes you find people like that. It's disappointing. It leads to a lot of heartbreak and disappointment. Believe me, most of the heartbreak and disappointment I think I've experienced in my life, a lot of it anyway, has been from those kind of things. You know, because you get invested in something, you get into it, and you think because, you know, you'll get certain people, you can tell with some people, then other people are just deceptive, you know. That's what hurts. You get these deceptive people and you think that they're all on board with whatever you're doing. And you think they've been on your team the whole time. And then one day, you know, you find out they haven't been in all this. They were just doing it for whatever stupid reason and didn't speak up and say something that, you know, didn't voice how they felt. Yeah. I've experienced that in a lot of ways. I've experienced that in bands. You know, you got people, you think everybody's all in, and then one day you find out you're the only one that's been in all along. You just had a bunch of people trying to convince you they were all in all along. That sucks. I've had it happen in bands. I've had it happen with girlfriends, of course. I just can't do that to anybody. But it's funny because people get offended by that too, you know. If you're honest and you tell people straight up, like, you know, I can't go 100% all into this. So then they get butthurt if you say that. So there's really no way to win in that kind of a situation. But, you know, if I'm into something, I'm into it, man. I can't just dip my toe in the water a little bit. A lot of people want to try and do that and try to dip their toe in the water of a little bit of everything. But those people are just fucking hacks, you know. I mean, I can multitask with the best of them too, but if you're going to achieve anything with anything you're trying to do, whether it be a relationship or a job, or you got to believe in it. You got to go all in. You can't just be dipping your toe in the water. And that's exactly what I've done with this work, you know. I still have my side interests and stuff that I'm into, and that's important too. You know, you got to have other things that are outside of whatever your main focus is, just so you feel like you're not just doing that one thing and nothing else all the time. But it's like I've talked about 100 times. It's frustrating. No, it's frustrating, but great for me because, man, all the time it happens to where, you know, all right, not looking at the news today. I'm not working on any film stuff. I'm not doing any research. Just going to watch some random movie on fucking BitTorrent. You know, well, what's this? Oh, this looks good. Let's download this. And then you get something like the Under the Silver Lake thing that I uncovered and decoded all that in the Mystery Hollywood series, which, by the way, you can get in the download shop. You can get a 5-pack and get all 5 parts that are $10 each and get it in a pack for $40. So definitely hit that up and get that. And get yourself one of those ultimate collection packs that has everything in the download shop. That's in there right now. $175 get you everything in the download shop. Individual download links for everything. Saving well over $100 getting it that way. So that's another thing to do. But yeah, when I get into something, I get into it, man, and dedicate everything to it, you know. But like I said, it's always just disappointing when, especially if you're trying to work with somebody else, and that's why I found doing this kind of stuff. You know, other than you guys, the listeners, and the supporters out there, other than you guys, I'm a lone wolf in all this. And that's strictly only because, you know, there's a lot of shitty people out there, man. And most people are not going to be as dedicated to doing what your vision and, you know, as they are something else. But regardless of that, oh, what's going on here? Hold on a second, folks. Something's wonky. Oh, there we go. No, that fixed it? Yeah, that fixed it. No, it didn't fix it. Hold on. Yeah, okay. Now I think it's fixed. Note to self, need new headphones. Start getting that short out thing where only one ear is working. It drives you nuts. Oh, and don't forget, too, this is our fundraising week for the show, so we've got to reach 100% of our operating cost goal in the next 2 days. You can find links to the fundraising page here on YouTube in the video. You can find it in the links on the archives, the members' archives as well. It's in there. And you can find it on the Global Reality Radio Network Facebook page and the Josh Reeves Filmmaker Talk Show Host Explorer page as well. We got to have everybody contributing, get everybody's contributions in so we can reach 100% of our operating cost goal in the next 2 days. And you can also go to my website, theglobalreality.com. Scroll down on the right-hand side. There's a donate button there. If you want to use a credit card, debit card, prepaid card without a PayPal account, you can donate that way directly to that. Also below that, somebody in the comment section of the YouTube video brought this up about wanting to make or if I had a way, like they wanted me to use Patreon or something. And I never got on Patreon from the beginning because something always seemed fucky about it to me. So I never messed around with that. It just seemed kind of weird. And now they've started to do exactly what YouTube has done. Now they're cracking down on stuff like my work. So I'm glad I never got in business with them to begin with, and so I don't have that. But somebody said, "Well, I want to, have a monthly. Can you do a thing where like a monthly donation comes out, the same time every month?" If you go to my website, theglobalreality.com, scroll down on the right-hand side of the page, there's the thing that says, it's not the subscribe button up top where you subscribe to the members archives. Some people get confused by this, so I want to specify. It's down, when you scroll down on the right-hand side below the donate button, it'll say subscription donation. You're not actually subscribing to any archives or anything. What it is it's got a drop-down menu where you can select an amount. And once you do that, it'll make a contribution in that amount immediately. And then every month on that same day, say you do it on the 30th today or the 31st, then every month on that day, that same amount will automatically be contributed to me. And then you can go on your PayPal account and cancel it anytime. But yeah, if you wanted to do that where you don't have to come back every month, if you want to contribute $100 every month, or you want to contribute $500 every month, or whatever amount it is, then yeah, you can go to that subscription donation thing down the right-hand side of the page at my website, and then select that, and then every month it'll just be a regular contribution. And I forget to mention that sometimes, but that's a great way you can do that. And that's a way for us to, have at least a small amount that we know we're going to have in every month on that day without fail. So want to bring that up, want to mention that. There's another way for you to support us. Let's get into some news. How long? Wow, talk about a flashback. I think I started first telling you this was coming 2012, 2013, maybe. Somewhere in there, I started talking about rare earth metals, and how that was going to be, a market to get into and a big way to make money in the future. And it's also interesting. In the film that I made, the Lost Secrets of Ancient America Volume 1, I talk about finding Behringer Hill down in south central Texas, around Llano down there, because I was looking for that was the biggest thing when I was trying to figure out the composition, where the composition minerals of the rock wall would have came from. I was searching for a location that would have had all of these component minerals in it available. And that's when I discovered the Llano uplift. And that's what, led me to finding what I believe to be 100% the quarry for the materials that the rock wall stones were made out of. And that led me down this whole rabbit hole of going down there and trying to find Behringer Hill, and then find out, just like the rock wall, there was a lake that was built on top of it to cover it up. And it was actually this big cave that had what they called the world's largest cache of rare earth metals anywhere on Earth. That's where they mined the uranium for Fat Man and Little Boy. But because of all this, these rare earth metals and this rare archaeological stuff they were finding there, they built the lake on top of Lake Buchanan to cover up. And then when I was down there, the lake levels, it was just chemtrails. I went down on 2 or 3 trips. There's chemtrails everywhere. They were in a massive drought, which I haven't been down there in a while, but from what I understand, the lake levels have been back to normal. But all the places that we would go down there, all the restaurants all had all these were, fundraisers and jars. Most of the people that go to Lake Buchanan have lake houses. They come either from other towns like Austin or Dallas or Houston or wherever. So they just have lake houses there. But there's very few people that live in the area. But a large amount of the citizens that lived around that area, when they started having the drought and the lake levels started to drop down to, and you could see the footage I got in the movie of how low the lake levels were. And they couldn't figure out why all of a sudden there was a massive, sharp increase in cancers in people that lived around the lake that they'd never seen before, that coincided with this dropping of the water levels and the explosion of Behringer Hill, because they didn't cap it or seal it all off. So all that cave in the area down there that had all the uranium in it, the lake levels had never dropped that low in the whole history of the lake. So that's when I started putting together, this is what's going on. They're not talking about it. And they used to have a thing where you could walk across the dam and you could go out there and see where Behringer Hill was. So we found out about this. We're like, oh, well, this is awesome. We're going to go see this motherfucker, And we kept not being able to find how you get over to it. Everything was closed. And finally we found that where the access was. We asked somebody. And when we got to where the access was, we found out that just a few years prior, that Homeland Security came into Lake Buchanan, took over control of the dam, and they had these big nests of cameras, everything blocked off. I mean, for decades before that, you could walk across the dam and you could go out and you could go over to the side where Behringer Hill was and all that. But just coincidentally, I guess, not, coinciding with the record water decrease in Lake Buchanan, and knowing that people are going to go out there and start looking for Behringer Hill, Department of Homeland Security closed all that off. They know what's there. That company, I didn't know the name at the time. Huawei is the name of the cell phone company. They've been in the news a lot over the past several years. But they were not in the news very much back in 2012, 2013. But I even talked about them in that film, because Huawei has like their world headquarters here in just right outside of Dallas in Plano, Texas. They had a big headquarters there. And now all the stuff has come out, they're saying, the whole thing is they banned Huawei phones in America because they said it has Chinese spyware built into the phones. Well, listen, so do all phones. So do Apple. Apple phones have the same fucking thing. What they're mad about is that China is creating these phones that have the same tech that iPhones have, and yet they don't try to hide it. So that's what they're mad about it. But I was talking about them. Huawei they were basically putting the lockdown on rare earth metals and the rest of it. And I kept saying, look, one of these days China's either going to run out, and we have basically the EPA. What happened was, up until I think 1989 or something, you could, because right now you can't even mine rare earth metals in the United States. Did you realize that? I mean, this is how insane this is. Because I believe it was in the late 80s, maybe the early 90s. I can't remember exactly when, but sometime in there, up until that point, you could legally mine rare earth metals in the United States. They put, Environmental Protection Agency put restrictions on that. And so, I mean, we have, not just at Behringer Hill, but I mean, it's a huge cache, but, other locations in the United States, there's no reason, we have no reason to rely on Chinese rare earth metals, and yet nobody on either side of the phony political aisle, left or right, will deregulate these EPA restrictions. We could crush China. That's what, that's another one of the many reasons why I can't get behind any of these phony political puppets, left or right, because none of them would want to do the right thing. We could crush China tomorrow. If they fucking built an expanded Lake Buchanan Reservoir, closed off and drained off the part that had Behringer Hill, and it started reopening that up and other rare earth mines in the United States, not only would it cause an economic boom to the tune of upwards of trillions of dollars, ladies and gentlemen, this is not bullshit. We could crush China, and we could have them at our knees. They'd be fucking sucking at our tits, paying any amount of money we told them to pay. But since the late 80s, early 90s, our government along with the EPA have felt that it's more important, because the problem is with a lot of these rare earth metals, it's not the mining of them necessarily. It's a lot of times it's what you have to do to extract the minerals from their post rock, and what you have to do to process them, and frankly the nasty processes that it takes to do what you got to do to these rare earth metals can only take place in a polluted shithole like China, where they're the biggest polluters in the fucking world, and it's because they don't have things like the Environmental Protection Agency. But if they did have those restrictions, you wouldn't have your nice shiny new iPhone or Android phone or whatever. But it's still ridiculous. There's no reason we should be relying on China or anybody else for rare earth metals when we have right here in the United States trillions of dollars worth of these materials that could then be shipped off somewhere to China and refined or whatever. But really what it boils down to is, like I've talked about many times, it is all about, every country in the world that's ever started out as a republic has became a communist socialist country eventually. And I've talked about that many times. You know what the plan is there. But listen to this. Now it's in the news. How a Chinese restriction on rare earths could threaten Apple. China is the world's supplier of rare earths. Export restrictions could be bad news for Apple investors. As trade tensions persist, a potential weapon in China's arsenal has emerged. Access to rare earth metals, a critical component of many technology products. China is the primary source of these rare earths for manufacturers around the world, and this week speculation emerged in the Chinese press that at the very least, the notion of slapping restrictions on rare earth exports is under evaluation by Chinese authorities should U.S.-China relations deteriorate further. Undesirable ripple effects for other trading partners or a likely disincentive from doing so. Listen, that's what I'm trying to tell you. Put some money in. You can buy rare earth stocks, but you got to have the patience to be able to ride out the flood. Most people, that's a problem, I don't. Yeah, I'm not giving you financial advice, but I'm just telling you, if I was a betting, if I was a betting man, I've been saying this for years. It'd be wise to put your money. I was saying this 7 or 8 years ago, but now is definitely the time. I wish I had a few, $5,000-$6,000 to park into some rare earth metal stocks, because man, they're gonna go to fuck up. So if any of you out there do that, and you end up making a grip of cash, hey, don't forget your boy over here, all right? Slide your boy a little tribute. You know what I'm saying? Remember, like, that's how the old Italian mobsters did it. Remember, like in Goodfellas? They had whoever the godfather of the guys, they had to give the tribute. Fucking, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna line up and sit in a fucking chair like I'm Polly or some shit. Motherfuckers walk up and hand you envelopes. That's what I'm saying. You make a grip of money on some fucking rare earth metals, don't forget about your boy, all right? That's all I'm saying. Slide your boy some cash over here. You make millions off of it, hey. Slide me $100,000 or so. Let's go. But really, and this is, listen, it's hubris on both sides. I get it. Everybody's arrogant in all sides of this stuff, be it the Chinese or the Americans. It doesn't really matter, but China's thinking they got the ha-ha on us. Oh, well, we'll fuck them in the rare earths. They have no idea. They have no idea. We could tank their whole economy tomorrow if the EPA deregulated and took off the restrictions of mining and production of rare earth metals in the United States. You'd see a massive boom in the economy. Fuck it. I mean, look, you got a city like Detroit that's basically just a dead city. Once it was like the richest city on earth at one time. Not an exaggeration. In the heyday, it was like the richest city on earth. You got massive amounts you got miles of square footage of empty factories and stuff there. They're just empty. That's why I don't get why, remember when, Amazon was trying to make their big old headquarters and trying to pick all these already overcrowded places like, Dallas and New York and stuff. Man, do it in fucking Detroit. You got a big old, you got industrial stuff that's just been waiting there, just sitting there rotting, these big, huge, massive places. And then just build a big fucking dome over it, and push all the pollution up to Canada. They won't mind. They're nice up there. I'm joking. Don't get your Canucks in a bunch there, Canadians. I love you. I do. I'm just spitballing, joking around here, but, it's true. We could crush China. And they know it. The powers that be know it. So why aren't they doing this? Well, like I said, the rare earth thing, it's nasty work. But there's got to be a solution. Rare earths are a category of 17 elements found in the Earth's crust, which have a unique set of properties that can make products more durable and efficient. That has made them critical ingredients in a wide range of modern technologies, electronic devices, batteries, lighting equipment, lasers, and much more. As just one example, an iPhone contains several components that use rare earths: cameras, speakers, taptic engines, and receivers. China is the world's leading supplier of rare earths, accounting for 95% of the world's output of rare earth minerals worldwide, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. Atomus Intelligence, a research firm that tracks metals and minerals, noted in a report that Chinese exports of rare earths increased by 91.7% between 2014 and 2018. Likewise, demand for rare earths is also increasing alongside rising demand for electric car batteries, including, according to the minerals consultancy Roskill. Rare earths are mined in other parts of the world, but for a variety of reasons, including ample supply in China, production quotas imposed by the Chinese government over time, supply chain relationships, and other factors, is wound up with a virtual monopoly on rare earth production. Apple uses rare earths in various products, components, but it should be product components, not products components. These people that write these articles, I swear. But unlike some other materials, rare earths are used in such small amounts that recycled forms aren't widely available. Apple has said that means they ultimately need to be mined. And I'm telling you, Apple, you need to hire a brother. Or, slide me a consultancy fee. Y'all got plenty of bucks. I'll give it to you for free, but you got to slide me some bucks if you end up doing this. Look, Apple, here's what you need to do. All you got to do, you got the money to do this. You got the money, you got the disposable income to do this. Go buy yourself some rare earth mines for sale here in the United States. There's a bunch of them. Y'all got the money to do it. And then put the fucking Apple logo on that sumbitch. Apple Mines. And then what you do is you take all the illegal alien immigrants that are coming in here that, are supposedly just coming here because they want to work and help help their families. You put them to work in the mines. Case closed. They get citizenship. They get a good job with benefits and, maybe not a very long lifespan, but hey, that's what you should do, Apple. Get yourself some rare earth metal mines. Get yourself some illegals. Case closed. But again, all these things I'm saying, kind of like Trump, if Trump could have came in a year ago and legalized marijuana across the board in the United States, he'd had enough money in the first year to build 10 walls and a wall around the fucking moon if he wanted to. Again, none of this, that's why you cannot try to make sense with politics and all this stuff. I don't have any degrees in political science or any of this stuff, but I can give you common sense ways to fix just about every problem in this country within 15 minutes, but that would be making sense. Nothing they do is about making sense. But I'm just sick of hearing this fear-mongering about, China having the stranglehold on rare earth metals and they control our technological future because they control bullshit. It's bullshit. That we have enough rare earth metals here to shut China down for good. But probably because, well, not probably, I would say probably 99.9% certainty, because let's just call it what it is, because there's no upside for the politicians and the military industrial complex and the medical industrial complex and big oil, basically all of the components of the people that make up the corporations that control America and other countries, but specifically the ones that control America. There's no upside to it for them because of the EPA restrictions, because of this, how much it costs to produce not only produce this stuff, but the nasty side effects and the nasty byproducts that are produced, how to keep a lid on that and how to dispose of that. In China, they don't give a fuck. Again, that's why they're the biggest polluter in the world. China's, you do whatever the fuck you want. But because the powers that be, as far as the politicians and the multinational corporations right now, don't see an upside for their bottom line in rare earth metals, that's why they're not. But I suspect it could happen. And if it does, it's going to be a new gold boom in this country. And, listen, you all deserve a piece of it as much as anybody else does. I actually had I've talked to some people who've invested in rare earth metals and stuff upon my advice, but they end up getting out of it and so because, at least over the past 7 or 8 years, there hasn't been any sort of glimmer of hope as far as the Chinese vice grip on the control of rare earth metals ever subsiding. So those stocks really don't end up doing much. Now, though, especially with the ongoing trade wars with China and the rest of this, and look, probably, listen, none of these, even though these politicians most of them are all 100% controlled puppets and crooks and everything else, I wouldn't give them credit very often, but I will give them, a lot of them just don't know this type of stuff. I wouldn't have ever known it had I not got into this Rockwall research and all the mineralogy and stuff. It's the only way I fell into all this stuff and finding out about that. But we literally have a spot down here in Texas, like 3 or 4 hours away from where I'm sitting right now, that has what was described even by the U.S. Geological Survey back in the early part of the 20th century as being the world's largest cache of rare earth metals ever found anywhere on the face of the earth. And it's just fascinating how that happened to also be exactly where, the only place even close to Texas or even close to the United States for that matter, where you could find all of these component minerals that are in the rock wall in one spot. So that's kind of how I stumbled into learning about the whole thing with rare earth metals and the rest of that. I had no idea up until I started getting into that, but that's when I started putting it together and going, wait a minute here. If China ever, started charging too much, which they did start to do, that was the thing. That's what they've been doing. They've been charging 10 times, 20 time markup on this stuff because of the only game in town. So if President Trump has any of his flunkies listening, or CIA, NSA flunkies listen to the show, I know you guys listen. Shout out to all the alphabet agencies out there that monitored my work in this broadcast and have for years. Shout out to the AI algorithms and programs that monitor this. But listen, President Trump, listen. You want to fuck China? Holler at your boy. Slide me a couple $100,000. We'll call it good. And you want to fuck China, dude? Just get the do away with the EPA regulations on the mining and production of rare earth metals in the United States. If you did away with that, it wouldn't be us and the rest of the world beholden to China for rare earth metals. It would be China beholden to us. So, there you go. I was just shocked to see this. Multiple news articles in the story in the news concerning this. And yet, nowhere, I went and looked again online, nobody in any of these articles in any publications are making the case for the EPA deregulation where we could start producing this stuff again in this country. But again, that goes back to something I've talked about many times. They don't want a solution. There's plenty of ways you could fix the economy or fix any of these so-called problems and issues. But then again, if someone creates the perfect system where everything works, then what does that do? Well, then it's just like the whole racism thing with, if you do away with racism, then that's why you have people that perpetuate it, like the fucking Sharptons and Jesse Jackson. All these guys would be out of business. They'd be out of work. There would be nothing to do. So of course they want to perpetuate racism where it doesn't exist. Same thing with politicians, man. They don't want there to be, a system that runs efficiently or a government that runs efficiently without the need of politicians. Of course not. That's one of the main reasons I get so frustrated and throw my hands up in the air. And sometimes I don't want to talk about certain stories or certain political agendas that are going on in the news. Cause it's just, once you actually have studied this stuff for so long and you actually see that there are viable solutions to all this that are very easy to enact, but because again, there's no upside to it, meaning there's no financial upside to it, to the people in positions of power or perceived positions of power, That's why nothing changes. I mean, if you had a way where you could fix all this stuff and at the same time make all the people that are in the multinational corporations and the lobbyists and, the crooked politicians, you find a way to, if they found a way to make it perfect and make them all rich at the same time, then you'll see some change. But that's not going to happen. And, much has been made about Trump not being a politician. The rest is, look, he may not be a politician, but when you get, I've said this before, when you get to the upper echelons of politics and big business, there's really no difference. They're all basically doing the same job. Most, if not all of the things that I've seen Trump do so far seem to be things that will benefit people like him and business people like him, That's the main thing. He's trying to make moves that make it look like they're being done for political reasons, and really they're being done for business and financial reasons. That's the main thing. Whether it be to give no bid contracts to, eventual troop encampments or what, Halliburton and shit like that on the border with the wall thing, or whether it be, now they're saber rattling Iran again, which they do every couple of years, and that's always just to get military spending back up. That's all that is. So the weapons manufacturers have an excuse to make more weapons, whether or not they get used or not, doesn't matter. That's what wars and rumors of wars are all about. So again, that's why I get frustrated with a lot of this stuff, folks, and I know you do too, to a certain extent. That's why I talk very rarely anymore about, certain political news items and stuff like that, except to call them what they are, which is total utter horseshit. It's just because, and I know a lot of you out there agree with me because you've come to the same conclusions, but once you've looked at this stuff for so long, you realize, wait a minute, these guys don't want there to be solutions to certain things. They want this stuff to be fucked up like it is, because, just like the Rothschilds funding both sides of every country in wars, that's what they want to ensure. That as long as they come out a winner, they don't care who wins or loses. So having solutions to this stuff. But what is the upside to China maintaining their lockdown on rare earth metals, and what's the upside to keeping rare earth metals in the United States restricted? And the only conclusion I can come to on both sides of that question is it has to do with, the byproducts of producing these rare earth metals and the byproducts and the waste, the hazardous materials that they produce. So the upside to China continuing to do, and again, there's no regulation for that kind of shit in China. You can pollute and produce whatever nasty cocktail horse shit you want to do with it and dump it anywhere you want. Doesn't make a fuck. We don't have that here in America. Thank goodness. But none of those things are excuses for the status quo to stay the same way. Just because it's more efficient it's not just because it's more efficient. The main reason is China just has so much. And in addition to, don't have the environmental regulations we have, so it's a perfect storm. So that's the upside for China to maintain its stranglehold on the rare earth metals. What's the upside for the United States of keeping them restricted with EPA regulations? The only upside is you don't have the harmful byproducts. But from my understanding is technology and all this stuff has progressed a whole lot in however many now, 3 decades or so it's been since they put these regulations on the mining of rare earth metals here in the United States. There's a whole lot of doing different technologies now. I believe you could find a way to do this and still make it, hell, take it down to Mexico. You got a lot of fucking empty land. All their people are coming up here anyway, right? So you got a lot of open spaces. That's what I say you do. Let's open up the fucking mining, and then we'll charge Mexico. We'll make them Goddamn, they should make me president for a day, shouldn't they? Just for a day. And then what we'll do is we'll take the processing of the rare earth stuff down to Mexico, right? I mean, there's lots of empty space in Mexico now. They're all flooding up here anyway. And then we'll make Mexico process our rare earth metals at a heavily, heavily discounted price because of their influx of illegals, much like Trump is trying to do now. I think he said he's going to put a 5% tariff every day on Mexican goods until, that's not a solution either. That's not going to stop these fucking people. They don't give a fuck. These people coming to fucking America from Mexico give two shits. If Trump puts a 100% tariff on products coming in from Mexico, he don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck. It's not going to hurt them. But that's my solution. That's what I would do if I was running things. I'd yank those EPA restrictions off. I'd reopen mining of rare earths in the United States and send the processing down and just build a fucking 15-mile gigantic facility in the middle of fuck all nowhere in the desert. Put a fucking big, seal it off. Dig a big thing underground and make the fucking Mexicans process our fucking. We've been making the Chinese do it. Hell, they need something to do down there in Mexico. Need something to do with all that fucking barren wasteland they got down there. Jesus. But again, like I said, all those things that I suggested, they do what? They make sense. And if you want to talk about hitting your head into a fucking, with a metal pipe and hoping to get different results, I mean, try to make sense to anything regarding this world stuff, because it's all about making the rich richer and making the enslaved more enslaved. And I'm good on being enslaved. I don't know about you. I don't need any more. I'm good. No, I'm good on that. I'll pass. No, I don't need seconds on enslavement. No, I'm good. No, I had enough. Yeah. I'm good. Thank you very much. But yeah, man, if the trade war stuff continues with China, I think that's going to be the only eventual. It just seems funny to me because I've been looking online to see if anybody else has put this together, and nobody else has. I literally can't be. It's just funny. I came up with a better plan than these fucking people that run Apple and the government and everything else can. If they just listen to me for 5 minutes, they could have this problem solved. That's hilarious. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me for tonight. We'll be back here with you tomorrow and plan on doing some more broadcasting over the weekend for you as well. Kind of been a slow news week. Hadn't got as many shows in this week as I wanted to, but hey, all you can do is what you can do. Don't forget to help us reach 100% of our operating cost goal by Saturday. Get your contributions in. If you want to have a topic of discussion or everybody contributes $100 or more, you can contribute something and I'll get to it on the show if I can. I love you guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care.